Welcome to another exciting episode of Submission Radio. It's April 28th, and we're just coming in from an exciting UFC 172. I'm Dennis Shkradov, and I'm here with Kasper Ozlowski.
Hey guys, it's an absolute pleasure. Yet another episode of Submission Radio, and I believe we've got a big, fat, juicy one today. Is that correct, Dennis?
It's always a big, fat, juicy one over here. We should almost be in a porno. It's how big, fat, and juicy it is. We've got three amazing guests today. We got Javier Mendez, we have Mike Swick, and we have Royce Gracie. So that's not a usual threesome that you'd put together there.
No, but we're coming at you like a Peter North video, and it should be good. It should be fun. We've got a lot of questions. As always, guys, check us out on Twitter and submit your questions, your fan questions. We've got our Twitter, obviously twitter.com/submissionoz. Check us out at YouTube, Submission Radio AU, and of course our Facebook, Submission Radio AUS for Australia.
That's right. So there's a lot of good stuff coming up now. After first we have Javier Mendez, then we have Royce Gracie. After that, me and Cass will be breaking down the amazing card that happened over the weekend. Oh well, it could be subjective. Is it amazing or not? UFC 172, the big boy. Everybody's been looking forward to this one.
Yeah, we want to hear your thoughts. What did you think? Did it live up to expectations? Was it everything you hoped for and more and a bag of chips? Or did you not like it for some reason? What did you think of the Glover versus Jon Jones fight? If you're watching on YouTube, definitely leave us some comments. Let us know what you thought. And if you're listening over Stitcher, iTunes, or TuneIn, then just keep on doing your thing and keep listening. But yeah, it's going to be a great show, and I can't wait to break down the UFC 172 card. A lot of good fights and a lot of interesting things to break down there.
That's right, guys. And if you're tuning in now and you didn't get a chance to listen to an episode earlier this week, we stop in with TJ Dillashaw talking about UFC 173, his thoughts on the upcoming title match that he's going to be a part of, and some interesting stuff came out of that interview, including his thoughts on giving Dominic Cruz an immediate title shot when he comes back, his thoughts on possibly fighting Uriah Faber, and how he thinks the match is going to play out. So if you're done listening to this episode, make sure you check out the other one. It was really, really good.
And also his thoughts on fighting 100 duck-sized horses. For real.
That could have been the greatest question we ever asked anyone, period.
I believe it was so far. And if you do, like we said, if you do have any questions for the guests, we're always up for interesting questions and even shits and giggles questions that can always be part of the tap out round. It's what we do.
That's right, guys. So don't forget, first guest Javier Mendez, second guest Royce Gracie, then we're breaking down UFC 172, and then after that, Mike Swick, obviously, opening up the big AKA school in Phuket, Thailand. So that should be great.
Yeah, but I think it's nearing that time. We should get our first guest on and get some questions out for UFC 172. What do you think, Dennis?
Yeah, I think so. UFC obviously 172. Luke Rockhold had an amazing fight, and we're going to be talking about it later against Tim Bosch. So I'm very interested to see what this man has to say.
All right, guys. Our next guest is an absolutely legendary trainer. He is head of the very well-known AKA Gym. He's none other than Javier Mendez. Javier, welcome to Submission Radio.
Thanks for having me, you guys.
It's an absolute pleasure. I've got a lot of questions for you. I'll probably kick it off with Luke Rockhold. He obviously fought at UFC 172 and he had a great outing against Tim Bosch. What did you think of his performance?
I thought it was spectacular. It showed, Luke dynamic in so many different ways. He can finish an opponent in almost every way possible that related to MMA. The kid is so well-rounded. That's basically what's showing, that he's extremely well-rounded.
Now, Javier, Luke hurt his toe apparently. He got a caught in the cage and apparently it was broken. Have you found out the severity of the damage, and do you know how long Luke will be out for with that injury?
No, I don't know. I have no. That don't know.
Now, Luke, obviously, he's been pining for that rematch with Vitor Belfort. Is this something that you've spoken to him about? And as a trainer, do you think that's the next correct fight for him?
It's the fight he wants, and if that's what he wants, then the UFC is going to give him that fight. Then mission accomplished. Like you said, he wants nothing given to him. He wants to earn everything he gets. And, if he was to get that fight with Belfort, then, if everything goes according to the way he would want it to go and we would want it to go, then, then should come a title shot right after that.
Yeah. Now, obviously, in the first fight, it didn't go to plan for Luke. If the fight happens, obviously, things have changed. TRT is now banned. and if they do fight, Vitor will compete without TRT. Do you think we'll see any kind of different Vitor? And do you think that it'll make a big impact on, or do you think it made an impact on the result of the first fight?
Well, the kick is the kick, I will say on that, but so I don't think that had anything to do with what happened. I think he just landed a beautiful kick, so I don't think that has anything to do with TRT. But on the other hand, I 100% believe that all fighters that are on TRT have a huge advantage over the other fighters that are not.
Well said, Javi. And now, Dana did mention that Anderson Silva may be returning at the end of the year. Is that a possible fight for Luke that you'd be interested in seeing as well? And how do you think he matches up with a guy like Anderson?
He matches up well. I personally would not want to see him with Anderson, only because a fight with Anderson to me is a title fight, and since Anderson's not the title holder anymore, I prefer him to fight, someone else. I prefer him to fight Weidman.
And how do you think he matches up against a Chris Weidman?
He matches up well with him. I mean, that's going to be a hell of a fight if that ever happens, because Weidman is one hell of a wrestler. He's got good submissions. His stand up is pretty good. I mean, that's the matchup.
And just still while we're on Luke, obviously his first fight in the UFC, he did lose quite decisively to Vitor. Do you think now that he's had two great wins, UFC fans are really seeing Luke for the great fighter that he is?
I think they're starting to. I don't think they're quite sold on him yet, only because of he needs one more big win. A win against Belfort would do it. A win against one of the top three guys would do it, but he's going to need that.
Now, obviously, onto another fighter of yours, Cain Velasquez. Now, Fabrizio Verdum recently was named the next challenger for Cain Velasquez's world heavyweight title. What problems do you think that Fabrizio presents to Cain?
Well, like anybody watching, you can see that he poses a problem in every area, except wrestling. And so we have to be careful, that we don't get overconfident, and that we don't let Cain get overconfident, because, Fabricio is improved in the stand-up night and day compared from his last fight to the fight with Travis Brown. So we have to be really, really careful that we make sure that we respect everything he has, because he's got quite a lot of tools now.
I think to a degree you've answered my next question, but I think a lot of people, they're talking about Cain Velasquez and just how far ahead he is of the division. And a lot of people are saying Fabrizio, despite his amazing improvements, he's not going to give Cain that much of a problem. What do you think about people saying that Fabrizio will be one of Cain's easier opponents?
I think that if we believe the hype on that type of talk, I think we're in trouble. I think we're in trouble. I think we need to take him as serious as we took Junior Dos Santos fights, the last two, because that's the way Cain's attitude's going to be going into that fight. He's going to look at him just like he did Junior. Not the second fight, third fight that he looked at Junior, because he respected Junior more so the third time he was going to go out with him. So he's going to respect, Fabricio really, really high. He's not going to disrespect him in any way.
Now, speaking of the first fight with Junior, like you mentioned just before, now, was that a fight that you felt like you guys did kind of overlook a little bit, and you came in kind of not giving Junior the props that he deserved?
In the first fight?
Yeah.
No, we knew what we had in front of us. Cain doesn't like to talk about it, and I'll just brush it off really quick, and I'll just say this. Cain will never fight again unless he's ready to go. And that's it. That's as simple as that. So he will never, ever do that again.
How is Cain doing? Obviously, he's had a couple of injuries, and unfortunately for the fans, we haven't seen Cain back as soon as we wanted. How is Cain doing, and when can we expect him back?
We're looking to get a final approval from the doctor for him to be able to use his left hand. 2 weeks ago, the doc gave him permission to be able to throw punches with his right hand. So I worked with him two weeks ago. and I actually worked with him this week also. And his enthusiasm, his training ethics, his attitude, and his energy for wanting to learn more is the same as the first day I trained him. So he's really anxious to get training. You know, he loves to train, he loves to compete. So he's looking forward to getting that final clearance to be able to use that left shoulder. And he hasn't used it at all. He's very, very cautious. He doesn't want to do anything that the doctor tells him not to do for fear of, you know, another delay, you know.
Just quickly, because what I heard was that it was the shoulder that was the biggest problem for Kane. What exactly did happen to his hand?
To his shoulder?
Well, is it his hand? Because I heard his left hand is hurt, but then I also heard his shoulder. So what happened to his hand?
I don't think anything happened to his hand. You know, not that I know of. It's his shoulder. That's where he had the surgery. Nothing's wrong with his hand, from what I know.
Okay, I must have read wrong reports.
Now, Javier, with Kane injured and out of the gym, and now Luke has the toe injury, is it difficult for fighters like Daniel Cormier in terms of training partners getting ready for fights?
It is, but you know, Daniel Cormier is a special type of fighter, athlete, coach. He does not let things like that get in his way. He'll grab whoever's there, and he'll do the best he can with them, with no exception. He's amazing. He's amazing to coach. He's an amazing coach for us also. So Daniel Cormier doesn't let things like that get in the way.
And just on that, obviously you were at UFC 172. Luke fought there just before on the weekend, and you saw Jon Jones. Now, Jon is a big possibility for Cormier in a title fight in the future. What did you think of Jon's strategy of having his hand out with his fingers out right in front of Glover's face? Do you think that's dangerous? What do you think of that kind of technique being used in MMA?
Well, first I got one clarification I have to say is that I didn't end up going to Luke's fight because my mom passed away the Monday and I had to attend to the funeral arrangements and the whole bit. So I was not there. You know, I wanted to be there, but unfortunately I could not. And in relation to the finger thing, you know, I think that it happens so much, and I don't think there's any real fighter that's a real true athlete is intentionally poking the other fighter in the eye. So I don't think that's a strategy that they use on purpose. I just think it's an unfortunate thing that happens because of the way the gloves are. So if there's something that could be done to fix the gloves, that would be fantastic. Or if there's something to say that you can't stick your finger out like that, you know, like they do in boxing, you know, you can't do it in MMA, then you know, then that could help that. But who knows, you know, even if they do that, that's going to help, because still when the person punches, sometimes his hand might be open, whatnot, and it's still going to hit the eye.
Yeah, that's a great point, Javier. And, you know, in this fight specifically, you know, it just seemed like Jones had his hand out right on Glover's face, holding onto his head and just holding it right in front of his eyes. Something like that could potentially be dangerous, don't you think?
Yeah, that definitely could potentially be dangerous. I definitely agree with that.
But
at the same time, too, am I there? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
At the same time, too, you have to marvel at how great of a fighter Jon Jones is, to be able to do what he did, to fight in every single area the way he did. I mean, he's just an amazing fighter that there's a lot of questions he answered yesterday, and I think a lot of people cannot be questioning this man's desire to stay champion. They cannot question his chin, and they can't. I don't think many people can really question anything in regards to how great of a fighter he is.
Yeah, just on a side note, I think one of the biggest takeaways from 172 was that we were literally watching greatness, you know, unfold. It was insane. I think in a few years we'll look back on Jon Jones and think, you know, I can't believe we were so lucky to watch this guy. But obviously, again, Daniel Cormier, I'm pretty sure he's going to be a contender very, very soon. One thing that happens in a lot of Jon Jones fights is that the opponents have a hard time getting past that reach. and they often say that, they'll be prepared and then Jon Jones finds a way. What will be some of the things that you'll be doing with Daniel to prepare him for Jon Jones's reach and to not fall into that trap?
Well, we probably won't have anybody that's like that per se, but I will tell you this: out of everybody that Jones has fought, Daniel's going to be the one that's not going to have an issue with his reach. It's not going to have an issue getting inside. He is going to get inside. What happens is going to happen, but I guarantee you this: he's going to go inside. Daniel's going to take him down, and we'll see what happens from there.
I'm excited already.
Yeah, that's going to be a big fight. Obviously, Daniel's got Dan Henderson first, though. What was Daniel's reaction when he found out he's got a guy like Dan in a fight? Obviously, a huge legend in the sport. And was he excited when he found out that he'd be versing a guy like Dan Henderson?
No, not in particular, no, because he likes Dan. He would particularly not want to fight Dan, but it's a sport, and about the only fighter out there in the light heavyweight division that I know of that Daniel will refuse to fight is King Mo. Anybody else is game on for him, but King Mo would be the only one that Daniel would never fight.
Another question also, you mentioned, we were talking about Jon Jones just a second ago. Jon Jones for a long time has been talking about moving up to heavyweight. It's something that he wants to do as part of his journey to becoming the greatest of all time. If Jon Jones did move up to heavyweight, there'd obviously be the super fight between Cain Velasquez. Do you think Jon Jones would present any problems for Cain?
Jon will definitely pose some problems for Cain, but Cain's going to pose more problems for Jon that he's never faced in his whole entire life.
Absolutely. And now, Javier, we have Mike Swick on the show after you, and we're going to be talking a little bit about AKA Phuket. Obviously, very excited. Mike Swick is about opening the gym. What does this mean for AKA San Jose? Will you guys be doing training camps there? Will you be training fighters there?
Not sure. That's the whole idea. A lot of the guys are excited about the mega gym that Mike's built over there, and they're all looking forward to going to vacation and getting some training in. So there will be a time when that's going to happen. He's still in the opening stages where it's almost completely done. And, we'll see what happens, but that's the plan, yes.
Now, I wanted to ask you, another one of your fighters who's really shooting up the ranks very quickly is Khabib Nurmagomedov. He's looked like an absolute monster and has passed every test that the UFC's thrown at him with flying colors. What do you think about him being on the prelims as opposed to the main card on Fox?
Well, I think that what they did put him on the prelims, I think that was really good because he was the main event, and in all likelihood, that's good. I think it was good. I read the message forums and everything, and that fight being on the prelims where he was the main event, he got a ton of
exposure,
of people talking about him. So I thought it was fantastic for that. I thought it really was. I thought I thought it was the best thing that could have happened for him.
And with Khabib in general, he has a tough time finding opponents. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's so hard for UFC to find opponents for Khabib?
One of them is that three lightweights belong to the same gym, which is Maynard and Josh Thompson and Khabib. So that eliminates 3 top 10 guys that can't fight each other. And then the other ones were in contract disputes. The other one was injured. I think that's the reason. I don't think any of the top 5 guys in the world are afraid to fight Khabib. But at that time, when it appeared that way, there were some things going on behind the scenes that made it look that way. But I don't think any fighter would duck another fighter. I really don't. I think they'd all fight Khabib. But they're going to be in trouble when they do.
Yeah, I would agree there. Now, you mentioned Gray Maynard. He's obviously another guy that you train. Now, for the first time in his career, he's had back-to-back losses. Where is he at mentally at the moment? And what do you think that you need to do and change with Gray in order to get him back to the top and win that title?
Well, Gray right now, he drops in and out. He's mostly been training at different gyms, and he's doing what all fighters do when things like that happen, and he's searching to find the right fit for him. We'll see whether we're still with them or not. It's hard to say, but I'm always with them regardless. You know, I love Gray, and I'll always be behind Gray no matter what decision he makes. He's not officially not with us, but you know, he is trained in different places. You know, and you know, I'm always in touch with him, seeing how he's doing, and he's in great spirits, and he's just you know, taking some time off from hard sparring. You know, because you know he wants to make sure that he's intact for the long haul. You know, that he doesn't get basically like a lot of fighters do. You know, that they take too much punishment. He's not one of those fighters that's going to fall prey to that type of circumstance.
And yeah, something you mentioned just now, hard sparring. There's this, a lot of people are talking about training smart, not hard, things like that. A lot of guys say that they don't even spar nowadays. What are your thoughts on this, as far as hard sparring? And do you think that it does take years off a fighter's, you know, career?
I definitely think it does affect the fighter's career, but I definitely think those are doing the hard sparring are those guys that are always going to beat you. As long as they're doing it right. But I don't think, like I've been telling my guys, you know, we do it 3 times a week, right? The guys that are getting ready for a fight. The ones that are not ready for a fight, don't have a fight within 2 months, I don't really want them sparring unless I need them. So I said, I don't really want you guys sparring. You guys can go, and we have like different rooms. I go, you guys go in what's called the red room, and I go, you guys just work technique and work light, stuff like that, you know. The ones that are getting ready for a fight, I recommend that they go at least 2 times hard sparring. And there's times I look at them and I see they're ready to go. And like Luke Rockhold, the final week of sparring, I told him, that Luke, you know, you're so much on where you need to be that you can only spar 1 time this week hard if you want, and then call it that. Or even then, I even said, even if you don't even want to spar hard the rest of the week, don't. You don't need it. You're good to go. But fighters don't have a tendency to really want to listen when you tell them things like that. They usually will just do their own thing, but they have to do it for themselves, and they do. They do. They don't necessarily listen to me, but I don't make them. I just give them an option.
Now, Javier, Josh Thompson's the name that you mentioned. Obviously, he had a very, very close fight against Benson Henderson. A lot of people thought he won that fight. After losing that fight, he was very vocal in talking about how he might be done with fighting, how he may not fight again. Is there any news on that? Is Josh looking to return to the ring? What are your thoughts on the whole situation?
Okay, well, he didn't talk about the retirement only because after the fight, he was talking about that months before that fight. So he was already on that track for the longest time. He was talking that way before he fought Nate Diaz. So you know, the talk that he had, he was saying things like that way before. So he, you know, the age thing was getting to him, and the being injured all the time. So he was thinking, oh, you know, some fighters put it in their head at a certain age, I'll be done, this and that. And now that age is there, and they're thinking, okay, now I'm done. But I think Josh realized, in my opinion, we really haven't discussed it in length about it, but I think he realized that he's still one of the best, and that there's no reason for him to retire, not in his position, especially after his last performance, dominating, in my opinion, the way I thought, especially the way his thumb was, and to boot, he had his ankle was slightly broke too, you know.
Yeah.
So he was on a cast there too, and you know, it's not to say that other fighters aren't injured in a fight. I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just stating facts, and the fact of the matter is, Josh couldn't throw his right hand the way he wanted to, and he still, in my opinion, dominated that fight. But when you have judges that, you know, actually, and I will say it, they don't belong judging MMA fights if they're judging it like a boxing match.
Now, speaking of that, MMA judging, now that's been a really big problem. Like you mentioned, they're judging it like a boxing match rather than an MMA match. What needs to be changed? You know, obviously MMA is a massive sport in its own right. What needs to be changed in the judging department, do you think, for fighters?
Well, for me, the only solution I find is if you guys get my meaning on this, it seems to me that the ones that understand who wins the fights more than anything is fighters. MMA fighters are always more likely picking the right guy, almost 90-something to 0 almost, you know. And to me, if maybe one of the requirements, which will never happen, that they have to have been MMA fighters to judge. That I think would take care of a major issue in judging. But that is never going to happen.
Now, Javier, before we move on to a thing that we call the tap out round, I just wanted to ask you one more question about Josh Thompson. Obviously, yeah, absolutely agree with you. You know, very close decision. He's right up the top. And the other thing, obviously, is, you know, he's front of mind for the UFC fans. You know, he's returned to the UFC. He's been a very popular fighter, but I think, you know, this is probably one of the peaks of his popularity. So it'd be a shame to see him leave. One of the things I just wanted to ask you was, how do you think he matches up with the champion, Anthony Pettis? Do you think that that's a fight that that's a good matchup for Josh?
He matches up really well with Anthony Pettis, and I think Josh Thompson and Anthony Pettis is fireworks. I think Gilbert Melendez and Josh Thompson is fireworks. So think about this: if Josh Thompson gets into the mix, he wins his next fight. I'm just talking ifs, and Gilbert Melendez beats Anthony Pettis. I guarantee the UFC is going to want a Josh Thompson Gilbert Melendez for. I know I would. That every time those guys fought was a great fight. I mean, that's the barn burner of a fight, guaranteed.
Yeah, that's going to be an extremely easy sell, and yeah, another fight that we'd love to see. I think it's ready for what we call the Submission Radio Tap Out round, Javier. Basically, we fire off a bunch of questions at you. This is like the getting to know you round, and it's kind of like word association. You just want to answer these pretty much as quick as possible. Are you ready?
Okay.
Okay. After reaching so many goals, what drives you to keep pushing your fighters to the next level?
More championships, staying on top.
What do you do to take your mind off MMA?
Just watch TV.
You and me both. If you were beginning your career as a fighter now, would you choose kickboxing or MMA?
MMA.
How's your relationship with Josh Koscheck now? And do you think with the severity of his losses, it may be time for Josh to consider retirement?
I don't think he should retire, but our relationship's still a thing.
Is Daniel Cormier cranky now that he has to eat salad to make the light heavyweight division?
Absolutely not. He's still a goofball like always and messing with everybody.
Who do you think at this time is the pound-for-pound #1 fighter in the world?
I'd have to give it to Jon Jones.
What's one of the most difficult things about being a coach that fans may not understand?
What was that?
What's one of the most difficult things about being a coach that the fans may not understand?
The pressure.
Name an up-and-coming fighter from AKA that we may not have heard about before, but it's going to be making a splash real soon.
Tomas Nomas Diagni.
What do you think about the striking in women's MMA at the moment?
I think it's the striking that's gonna not make it as interesting for the women.
How important was your relationship with Frank Shamrock and the relationship in general to AKA?
Well, I love Frank. The relationship between Frank and I, to me, it's extremely important. We were separated for a while in the department. Since then we've come back to round circle. So to me, it's a very important thing.
And AKA Phuket in Thailand, will we see an AKA Australia one day for the Australian fans?
It's possible. That's a question that Swick might be able to answer.
We'll ask him later on then.
Okay, guys. Well, there it is. Javier Mendez, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been such a pleasure having you, and a lot of the great things being settled in the interview. You can follow him at AKAGAV and check out akakickbox.com. Javier, it was an absolute pleasure, and looked great over the weekend.
Thank you.
What an awesome guy, and so interesting to listen to. I don't know about you, Dennis, but I love getting these like really smart, articulate guests, and especially the coaches. I mean, they have so much to say about so many fighters, and that they've got an intelligent opinion. So I love getting these guys on. Yeah,
these articulate guests, they give me a run for my money, and don't make me look very good. No, I'm kidding. I love having him on, and Javier said a lot of great things. So definitely excited to speaking with him a little bit closer, to one of the big fights coming up that he mentioned and one that he spoke about. But before we go to Royce Gracie, Cass, there's a few things the people need to do before we go on to the next interview. If they're not following us on Twitter, they need to follow us on Twitter. And that's Twitter/submission AUS, Submission Oz, as they call it here.
Yeah, and if you want to check us out on Facebook, it's facebook.com/Submission Radio AUS, and our YouTube. We've got a new YouTube channel. It's Submission Radio AU. The old one, things happen, ghastly business, that, don't worry about it. It's our new channel. Everything brand, all our new episodes, clips, interviews, etc., etc., is going to be on the new channel. So definitely check that out. And as always, you can listen to this show on Stitcher, iTunes, or TuneIn if that makes your life easier. But I think it's time to move on to our next guest. This guy's kind of a big deal. Dennis, tell everybody who we've got next.
Our next guest on the show needs no introduction. He is one of the pioneers of MMA. He is an iconic name and a name that everybody respects in every facet of MMA. We have Royce Gracie on the show. Royce, welcome to Submission Radio.
Thank you. How are you doing?
Well, we're doing a lot better now that you're on the show, Royce. Now, Royce, some cool news came out. You're a part of the new EA UFC game. People have been looking at the photos. They look spectacular. How did this all come together?
Well, I was on before, and so I guess they wanted me to be in again, maybe because of what I did in the past.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe because I fought the guys with no time limit, no rules, all weight division, no weight division at all. So back in those days.
I think it's probably definitely got a lot to do with that. You're definitely a legend in the sport. But what's crazy is back in the day, you'd have fighting games like Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter and Tekken, and all those fighting games, they were all about striking. And now in this obviously in EA UFC and even past MMA games, the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu aspect is getting so much respect and so much attention, almost as much if not more than the striking. How does this make you feel as far as how far Brazilian Jiu Jitsu has come to the point where even mainstream media is covering it?
Well, if you go back about 20 years ago, Inside Karate, Inside Kung Fu magazine, Black Belt magazine, all the magazines in America that talk about martial art, Gracie Jiu Jitsu, wrestling, judo, was never in there. Was not considered to be a martial art. Only the striking arts. So I have wrestlers, I have judo guys coming to me all the time and saying, "Hey, thanks for putting us on the map. If it wasn't for your family showing Gracie Jiu Jitsu to the world and how important grappling it is, and we wouldn't be on the map today. Nobody would consider us not to be martial arts."
Now, Royce, speaking of your family, Royal Gracie, he was a part of Metamorphosis 3. It was a great event. It was very, very big. A lot of people tuned into that event. After the event, it was well documented that you had a few things to say to Eddie Bravo because you felt like he disrespected you. Can you tell us about what happened?
I did what every man should do when he has issue with a person. Talk face to face. I don't approve what he represents. You see, it's nothing to do with the match with Royler. There's nothing to do with what he's doing in Jiu-Jitsu. Is what he endorses. I don't approve it. It's disrespectful to the art of what my father created. We teach kids. So I don't endorse alcohol and I don't endorse drugs.
I know with Eddie Bravo, a lot of the things like his positions, there's like crackhead control and things like that. What is that the aspect that you're not a fan of?
Say it again?
With Eddie Bravo, a lot of his jiu-jitsu positioning and things like that, it relates to obviously weed smoking and drugs. Is that the aspect of Eddie Bravo's jiu-jitsu that bothers you?
My issue with him, it's simple. I don't like because he endorses nothing to do with jiu-jitsu he uses, gi, no gi. It's not because of it's because of what he endorses. We teach kids. His message out there is it's okay for you to do drugs. It's okay for you to. I don't care if you say, well, it's prescription drug. Well, get a pound of
pot and walk into a police station, you're going to get arrested. Once the guy endorses pot and endorses drinking, to me, that's wrong, because I have kids too. I don't want my kids involved with pot, and I don't want my kids drinking.
No.
And I did what every man should do. He will have a problem. Talk face to face to the person. What did he do? Went to the internet. Oh my God, I'm sorry, Royce is trying to kick my ass. Oh, he wants to beat me up for me.
Now, Royce, Eddie did say in a recent interview about his jiu-jitsu that he thinks that it was partly because, and this is what he said, that I dropped the gi. I dropped the gi for jiu-jitsu to make jiu-jitsu look better in the UFC. The UFC got me into jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu didn't get me into the UFC. Is that a thing that annoys you as well? Perhaps that Eddie believes that him dropping the gi and that original Brazilian jiu-jitsu wasn't interesting enough for him, and that his version of jiu-jitsu is a lot more interesting for people to watch?
He can think whatever he wants to. That's not my issue. That's not my problem.
As far as the whole Eddie situation, are you still interested in having an MMA fight with him, or would you possibly want to verse him in the next Metamoris?
I never challenged him for MMA fight. You guys are the ones that keep saying. By the way, do you smoke pot?
Me, no. Dennis doesn't either.
Do you endorse pot?
On our show, definitely not, no.
Do you? So if you don't, do you have kids? Do you want your kids to smoke pot? Do you consider pot not to be a drug? So that's my problem with him. That's it. Simple.
Okay, great. So
it's not because of jiu-jitsu. I don't know what's the point you want to make with this. How much you guys are the ones that say, well, do you want to fight him? I'm an MMA fighter. If he wants to do an MMA fight, we'll do it.
Okay, great. So just to clear it up for everybody out there, because I think like you said, there has been some misconception. Some media has been perhaps talking about stuff that's not true. You have no interest in fighting Eddie, and this was all about the drugs, and basically that was your problem with him.
I don't endorse fighting. I mean, I don't endorse drugs. I don't endorse drugs, sorry. My issue with him is that you guys are the ones that came up, you, the media, that came up and said, do you want to do a match with him? I have no interest in doing a match with him. Unless he's an MMA fighter. Yes, I do jiu-jitsu for living. My jiu-jitsu is with the gi. It's the real style of jiu-jitsu. It's with the gi. And I fight MMA.
Well, great. Well, I think now from this interview, everybody will know what the truth is, and I think that's a good thing.
Unless if you want to lie about it and you want to endorse drugs. Go ahead.
No, I mean, on this show, we were only really talking about MMA. Drugs aren't really our forte, so to speak. But as far as the growth, let's talk about the growth of MMA. You're one of obviously the pioneers of the UFC. What was the first UFC like, and can you believe the growth of the sport when you go to events now?
Man, on the first UFC was a style against a style. Today it's more of an athlete against an athlete, because everybody learns stand up, everybody learns grappling. You see, everybody knows Gracie Jiu Jitsu, everybody knows how to kickbox. So it's more of an athlete against an athlete. Who have a better strategy?
Absolutely. And you were at UFC 172 over the weekend. Seeing Jon Jones fight, is that kind of cool, seeing the next kind of level of MMA and how he's mixing all the skills of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and everything together?
It's awesome. Actually, Jon Jones is using more Gracie Jiu-Jitsu than a lot of the fighters out there, even a lot of the Brazilians.
I wanted to also ask you, as far as big fighters, Ronda Rousey. I mean, up until her last fight, she was winning all her fights by armbar, and makes us reminisce about obviously Hickson and all his dominant victories via the armbar. What are your thoughts on Ronda's armbar and just her jiu-jitsu in general?
She's good, man. She sticks to her plan. She comes in. She's a grappler. She's a judo player. So she comes in. She gets in the clinch, take the opponent down, and go for the finishing hold. She doesn't learn boxing to get over there and get in the cage and start to exchange firepower. with the other girls. She sticks to her game. That's very good.
And just speaking about women's MMA, Royce, what do you think of the progress of women's MMA? Obviously, now it's in the UFC. It's become very mainstream. What do you think when you watch some of these women fight? How do you think the progress is coming along?
Man, it's always been there. It's just they never had a chance. They always been training. They always been fighting. It's just they never had a chance before. Now that the people understand more about the UFC, it's a sport. It's not just two thugs getting a cage and fighting. Yep, open up a whole new door.
Hey, Royce, I also wanted to ask you, obviously you've had definitely your share of submission victories, to say the least. Now, Rousimer Palhares recently came under fire in regards to his leg locks. I wanted to ask you, as far as, with obviously the ending to a fight, do you think a fighter should let go when the opponent taps or when the referee steps in? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, if the opponent taps, and the referee is just sitting there, not interfering, keep going. Referee says, let it go. Okay, he tapped, let it go. Now, depend. The guy, you see, you got it. It's clearly that he's tapping, not a hidden tap. If it's a hidden tap, keep going. Tell the referee stops. Because if not, he can do like Ken Shamrock did to try to continue. But if it's a clear tap out and he's in pain, there's no need to continue squeezing. With referee, it's like the guy that's knocked out. You know he's out. The referee haven't stopped the fight yet, but you're going to keep pounding his face. Now he's just being cruel.
Now, Royce, famously Gerard Gurgeot, he bit you once during a fight. Can you tell us about some of the most difficult situations that you've been in an MMA fight where something like that's happened?
Man, that was nothing, man. That was just, he bit my ear, but okay. He said, didn't take a piece off. He tried to bite, I pulled it off. The most difficult part in the fight, man, is getting ready for the fight. Getting ready, the 3-4 months of training camp. That's the hard part.
Speaking of training camp, there's a lot of BJJ schools all over the world, and a lot of gyms try to use the popularity of MMA and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu to get more students without actually getting experienced or skilled trainers. Do you think that this is a problem?
Wait, say it again? What's the problem?
There's a lot of schools that because the UFC is popular, they advertise that obviously there's MMA and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, but they don't have skilled Brazilian Jiu Jitsu teachers.
Yes, it is a problem. It's a problem. Why? Because they're not going to get the right instructor, the right instruction.
Now, one of the things that's been happening in the UFC lately is there's been a lot of Sambo fighters coming in, and famously Khabib Nurmagomedov was wearing a T-shirt at weigh-ins and said if Sambo was easy, it would be called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Does it annoy you sometimes that people compare Sambo to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Because obviously Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is such a big part of Sambo.
Not at all. It doesn't annoy me at all. It's go do what I do for a living. Go fight the fights that I fought. Then you come talk.
Now, Royce, you're over at UFC 172 and you're watching a lot of the great fights. Is there a part of you when you go to these fights that wishes you were still competing in MMA? Do you ever want to get right back in that octagon? You know, obviously you're a big competitor and, you know, you're in great health for your age. Have you ever, you know, really wished you could get back into the octagon?
Nah, if I wish, I would be there. So no, I don't wish. If I wish, I would do it. I'm the kind of guy to get up and do it.
Okay. Royce, I think it's time for what we do. We call it the Submission Radio Tap Out Round. It's basically where we fire off a bunch of questions at you, and you pretty much try and answer them as quick as possible, kind of like word association. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. After your first UFC win, you said you're going to Disneyland. Can we come with you to Disneyland one day?
Sure. I live right next to Disneyland.
Yeah, we'll have to come up all the way from Australia, but it'll be worth it. Now, what's your secret to looking exactly the same for the last 20 years? Have you found the fountain of youth, and are you hiding it from
Wait,
us?
start again, sir, please.
What's your secret for looking so young and exactly the same over the last 20 years? Have you found the fountain of youth, and are you hiding it from us?
Gracie diet.
What's in the Gracie?
I don't drink. I don't smoke, and I don't go out partying that much. So, not at all. So, yep, I live a life of an athlete.
All right. What's your favorite submission, Royce?
The one that I can pull it off.
Do you think shows like malnourished are setting a standard for Brazilian Jiu Jitsu shows in the future? And it helps Brazilian Jiu Jitsu fighters make a lot more money, might help Brazilian Jiu Jitsu fighters make a lot more money in the future?
Depends if they put the matchups, not just for Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, but for all the grapplers.
Okay, finish this sentence, Royce. People don't know that I
Can shoot very well.
don't want to get on the bad side of you then.
Royce, who's someone that you've never gotten a chance to fight but wish you did, while you were still an active MMA fighter?
Been there, done that.
Okay, what's your
I fought everybody they put in front of me. Never refused a fight.
What's your most memorable MMA fight?
Ooh, that's a hard question. I don't know. First 3 fights in the UFC 1, or the 4 fights in the UFC 2, maybe against Himo, 250 pounds, maybe against Dan Severn, 265. Maybe against Sakuraba, an hour and 45 minutes in the ring. Maybe against Akibono, 6'8", 490 pounds. Hard to pick one.
So many great moments. And Royce, the final question: when it's all said and done, obviously you're a fighter, you're a trainer, you're a great family man, and you do a lot of great things. How would you like the MMA community, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fans, all your fans, to remember you?
Then that's up to them. That's not up to me.
Well, there you go. He's a man of few words, but he's very specific. And Royce, thank you so much for coming onto our show. It's been a real pleasure. And obviously down here in Australia, we're all huge fans of yours. So it's been a bit surreal to have you on our show.
Thank you.
You can catch him at roycegracie.com or on Twitter at RealRoyce. Make sure you follow him so you can catch up to all his updates and, find out exactly, what the Gracie diet is and what Royce has been up to, because he's always up to great things.
Thanks, Royce. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
The Gracie diet. That sounds really interesting. I wonder if it's a little bit like the Submission Radio diet. Buffalo wings and tears.
Yeah, I think it's very similar. And I wonder if Royce will ever take us to Disneyland. I mean, he sounded like he really meant it when he promised us that. So I'll expect a call.
Well, he said he lived close to Disneyland, so I don't think he has any excuses now if we show up at his doorstep tomorrow.
We should totally do that. We should book a plane now and head down there and just knock on Royce's door. There is no way that could ever be awkward. No way.
Well, I mean, as long as you bring that recording with you to prove that he did say it in the interview, everything should be fine. Make sure that he knows that the media doesn't lie. So there you go.
Yeah, he called us sir, so I think he expects us to be a lot older. I think he expects us to be old men. So, yeah.
One of the things on my to-do list is to become a sir and to go to England and do that. So maybe he read my mind. Maybe it's a Gracie trick.
Gracies, they do that. And yeah, Royce Gracie, the one and only. There really is only one.
Yeah, that's right. But you know what? It was a pleasure having him on the show, and we got to speak to him about some interesting things. And so it's great to find out what he really thinks about this whole Eddie Bravo situation. So as he heard it, he doesn't really want to fight him, and he's got a problem with the way that the life that Eddie lives. So everybody's entitled to their opinion. So it was great to find out his.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's time for some breakdowns. I think it's UFC 172 breakdown time. Obviously, over the weekend we had UFC 172, the title fight. Big undercard, quite a big main card as well. Dennis, what did you think? We'll start with obviously the prelims. First up was Charlie Brenneman versus Danny Castillo. And wow, what an awesome knockout. What did you think?
I think Brenneman has a cool name. When you say Brenneman, it's sort of like when Paul Heyman says Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, it's like Buttercuco Fibers with for David Letterman.
That's a smooth word. But yeah, when I saw this matchup, I thought Charlie Brenneman, someone who just came back into the UFC, a great guy. I've heard a few interviews with Charlie, and I'd love to have him on the show. He's a great guy, great family man. Happy that he made it back in the UFC. But I did think it might have been a little bit of a mismatch. Danny Castillo, UFC veteran, did really good against Barbosa recently. I thought it was a bit strange to have him on the Fight Pass card, as we mentioned earlier. Obviously, the fight played out quite interestingly, and Danny got a bone-crunching KO finish that, really kicked the night off with a bang.
Well, yeah, Charlie was actually doing really, really, really well until Danny Castillo Kevin Randalled him like Kevin Randleman did against Crocop when he did that sneaky level change, and then big overhand right straight to the jaw. Although I think technically Randleman's was a left. But I digress. Charlie Brenneman did really well in the grappling. He really out-grappled Danny Castillo until he got knocked out. And as Dana White said, I think, look, Charlie Brenneman, he obviously didn't have the greatest run again in welterweight. People are always talking about that Rick Story win. But as we remember, that was at least 2 years ago, I think possibly pushing 3. Dropped down to lightweight, and he's had very mixed results. I think most people thought he'd get cut. But as Dana White said in the press conference, nobody's getting cut after this card. So I'm happy for the Spaniard. I'm happy he gets to keep his job, and I'm happy that he gets to fight on and have another shot at lightweight.
That's right. DW keeping the hens in the hen house.
That's it.
Good stuff.
Up next, we had Beish Koyea against Jessamine Duke, which was it was an interesting fight because it wasn't what we expected. I think a lot of people expected Jessamine to really go in there, put on a clinic, but Koyea really stayed in there. She really, I wouldn't say she outclassed Jessamine, but she was just the busier fighter. I think Jessamine was a little bit too complacent. She had some decent boxing, maybe didn't fight as long range as she wanted to. Definitely didn't fight like a Jon Jones. A little bit, she used her reach a little bit more like a Stefan Struve or even a Kendall Grove. I just think Jessamine's issue here was she was a little bit too slow and not quite busy enough, and that's why obviously Koyea, got the nod. And I didn't really think that she had the greatest cornering either. They basically poo-pooed her work in the previous round, saying, keep doing what you're doing great. And I think in this fight, it was far too close to just keep doing what she was doing.
Yeah, I think one of the issues, and we've spoken about this a few times on the show, is if you have the reach, it doesn't necessarily mean you have an advantage. You got to learn how to use it properly. And to a lot of fighters, and I'm talking about guys like Stefan Struve, who's an amazing veteran and a great fighter in his own right. Sometimes guys like that and girls like Jessamine, they just don't use that reach to their advantage like a Jon Jones. People don't realize how hard it is. And I think it was a case of the punches and bunches coming for Carrera. She just outworked Jessamine, like you said, and perhaps not the best advice from the corner. Obviously, she shares the corner of Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler and the likes. So would you expect better cornering, Cass, from something like that?
Yeah, I would. I definitely would, especially, this is the camp that obviously puts together Ronda Rousey's game plans, but it kind of makes you think how much of it is Ronda Rousey and how much it is, the corner. But then again, I think it's pretty unanimous. The Jackson Winklejohn camp is one of, if not the best camps in the world. You could always argue between that and AK and others in American Top Team, et cetera, et cetera. But, Jackson fighters don't always win. It's not like the Jackson camp is always undefeated. So obviously it does come down to the fighter. And if they don't listen or they just don't perform or they have an off night, so sometimes it's just not their night. So I'd be very interested to have a chat with Jessamine and see what she thinks about that fight and what exactly went wrong for her.
Yeah, Carrera, you could compare Carrera to Sting in WCW, and you can compare Jessamine and the other girls to the NWO. Carrera's trying to take the NWO down. And something else, after the fight, she did say that she's looking to take out the other members of the Horsemen. She's trying to pull a, I don't know, what, an NWO, would you say? Or
Sakuraba and the Gracies.
Sakuraba and the Gracies, that's right. So there's a bit of a rivalry there. And you know what? I dig it. I dig it heavy. I like a bit of that, especially in WMMA. So, some great storylines about to happen. And I don't think Ronda Rousey and the girls are going to take that lying down. I think there's going to be a bit of revenge planned. It's not going to be. They're not going to run into a cage match and handcuff it to the fence.
We won't
to the
see
ring.
David Arquette anytime soon, but
that's a shame, though. That is a shame.
Maybe guest referee who ends up winning the women's championship.
Yeah, that's right. Everybody who has no idea about pro wrestling is tuning out right now. Hey, give us a break. They're called the Four Horsewomen. That's what we love about them. But I definitely think Jessamine will have another shot in the UFC to prove herself. So sometimes you just don't show up, and someone else just shows up a bit better. And that's just what happened that night.
Speaking of guys who definitely showed up, next fight you had Gomi versus Isaac Valley Flag. I mean, that was a sick fight. The first round was a little bit of a teaser. They started off a little bit slow, few bombs, and as the fight progressed, just more and more bombs. I mean, Isaac's face by the end of it, Jesus Christ. It was kind of a fight that could have gone either way, pretty close. I think definitely deserving of fight of the night. Although I will say Jon Jones' performance was pretty amazing, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, it was definitely a fun fight. Definitely something reminiscent of old school UFC around the 70s, 80s, 90s. Something that you'd see like a Spencer Fisher or a Chris Light or one of those guys having one of those fights. So it was a fun fight. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out on the prelims. But I'm happy for Gomi. He's had a rough start in the lightweight division, dropping fights to Nate Diaz, Kenny Florian. Had a great knockout over Tyson Griffin, but it's very mixed results. So good to see Gomi get the win, and see the Pride veteran, and once thought of as the best lightweight in the world, to continue his fighting career.
Yeah, trying to win the motorcycle, the Harley Davidson motorcycle, putting up a few videos on Twitter. Give the man a shot. He deserves it if anyone does. And, taking Gomi showing a good combination of submissions and striking in this fight. So definitely excited to see where he goes next.
And definitely excited to see where he rides on that motorbike, assuming he gets it. I'd like to see Gomi on that motorbike.
The Dairy Queen. That's where all the hipsters go.
Yeah. And then after that, we had Tim Elliott, who is a mix of Keith Jardine and Dominic Cruz when he fights against Joseph Benavidez. And that was a crazy submission, now officially dubbed the Joa Constrictor. It was pretty mixed at the start. Actually, Tim Elliott had his flashes of brilliance, especially in the grappling part. But Joseph Benavidez, that was a sick submission. It's basically like a guillotine, but he was sitting on him, and his hands weren't exactly constricted, but because Tim Elliott was trying to push him off, he couldn't really use his hands, so he had to tap out pretty brutally with his feet. It looks like he was trying to ride a bicycle, maybe campaigning for that Harley Davidson motorbike. But all in all, another great performance from Joseph Benavidez. Another great performance from the Team Alpha Male, and another win for the good guys.
The good guys, that's right. Nicely put. And how many times do these guys need to get a guillotine before people realize they can get guillotines from any position? Probably get a guillotine from standing, flying,
helicopter guillotine.
Helicopter guillotine. There you go. Joseph Benavidez, we spoke about this guy in detail in the last show. He's a little bit stuck at the moment, but in the post-fight press conference, he sounded pretty upbeat. He said, "Hey, Uriah's the leader of our team. He showed us that you could lose title fights and get back into contention. It's happened to him twice, but I think he's pretty hopeful, and he's an exciting guy, Joseph Benavidez. So I think everybody enjoys watching him fight. Next fight, though, I'd like to see him on the main card, but that's just me personally."
Yeah, of course. And then, of course, we have to wrap up the prelims because we are running a bit low on time. We've got another guest on, obviously Mike Swick. But just quickly, big ups to Chris Beal for that amazing flying knee. Absolutely awesome. And I'd love to see Chris Beal get that motorbike just because I think he's very much the underdog. He finished Patrick Williams. It's obviously not as well known as the other guys, but it was a beautiful flying knee, and I think it's probably picture perfect and probably the second most beautiful flying knee after Misha Tate's on that beach on ESPN or Sports Illustrated or whatever it was.
Yeah, that was a knee and a half. But just to Patrick Williams, young kid, first fight in the UFC, tough loss. I had a look at his Twitter just to see what was going on. He seemed pretty upbeat, understanding that he'll still have opportunities in the future. And I really hope that he does. Definitely a highlight for Chris Beal, and excited to see where the young kid goes next.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to the main card, the curtain jerker for the main card was, of course, Max Holloway against Andre Fili. Now,
Touchy-feely.
The guillotines continued, and Max Holloway obviously got him in the third round. And you know what? Max Holloway really proved us wrong. He may look like a sneaky old man with a mustache, but he's a young kid, and he really goes for it. He really hurt Fili. I think I wouldn't say outclassed him, but he really got the better of him. And I was a little bit disappointed by Fili. I thought he had more to offer in that fight. What do you think, Dennis?
Well, yeah, Feely came in with a whole lot of momentum into that fight, and I think both of them looked great throughout. But Max Holloway definitely did edge out during the fight. Both kids very young and very accomplished for their age, and it was good to see that Touchy Feely was on the right page going into this fight. Max Holloway did outwork Touchy Feely. That guillotine in the final round was a brutal guillotine, and why was it brutal? Because Touchy Feely was going to get out of it, but that thing was so tight that even when he had a good, decent position and was almost out of it, Max Holloway took that thing and cranked it. And I felt the pain. I felt the pain through the screen when that thing happened. It was a very, very nice guillotine. And if you followed us on twitter.com/submission radio AUS, you would have seen a picture of a guillotine pop up in the news feed because we dubbed it the night of the guillotine. So perhaps the beginning of the guillotines.
Pop
Was it the
guillotine.
middle of the guillotines? There were a few more. There was another guillotine.
It was
So
actually it was perfectly in the middle. It was after Benavidez's one and right before Jim Miller's one, which was obviously the next fight. Jim Miller against Yancy Medeiros. Yancy Medeiros once fought at light heavyweight, and who would have thought? I mean, you look at this guy, he looks like a Nate Diaz, like a Nick Diaz. He's got that kind of body type, lanky dude, almost like a short, the Spider, not Anderson, the other Spider, Kendall Grove. And yeah, I mean, look, Yancey, he really stepped up on short notice to face a guy like Jim Miller, who's a very good veteran. You know, once considered one of the best in the lightweight picture. Almost got that title shot, and yet again another submission for Jim Miller. So this guy can really grapple, and you know, not Yancey's best showing, but that's the thing when you jump in the deep end, there's always a chance of that. And obviously Yancey will get another shot. He did really good coming in there, stepping up, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he has and if they bring him up a little bit slower.
Yeah, and I think one of the things here that we're looking at is another guillotine, and Miller drops down to guard with a tight arm in guillotine in this fight. A lot of fighters, what casual fans may not realize is a lot of fighters in training, everyone's trying to put a guillotine on them, but they rarely finish it. There's only a few guys out there, like a Joseph Benavidez, like a Max Holloway, like a Jim Miller, that could do something like that. Cass?
Yeah, guys like Uriah Faber and et cetera, et cetera. Obviously with the guillotine, you feel it, you get it on you. Me and Dennis, we've dabbled in jiu-jitsu, among other things. You feel that guillotine.
Yep.
The naked submission radio, no credit card needed. Yeah, you feel that guillotine, and it's something that you feel like you can get out of, and also it takes a long time to kick in. If you don't get it, you might be screwed. You might gas your arms out. And if you watch obviously fights, more often than not, the guillotine, it's an often sought after move. Guys often drop down to get it, but they usually don't. But guys like Jim Miller, they're so technical.
Yeah.
They're so also strong. Jim Miller's a strong
Yeah.
lightweight. He's a strong dude. And he's a veteran. He's been around the block. He knows what to do. And I think, Yancey, he doesn't quite have that experience. And I think, he expected he was going to pop out of that guillotine like he probably usually does in training. I mean, the guy trains with the Diaz brothers. But, unfortunately it wasn't to be. So Yancey's not doing the greatest. I mean, he's obviously, he lost to Rustam Khabilov. Eved was obviously a no contest. He stopped smoking weed after that. And then Jim Miller. So it's technically 3 in a row. Or 2.5, however you want to look at it. But yeah, Yancey the Kid, Medeiros, he'll have another shot.
Yeah, he'll have another shot, and I think it's just a great lesson to all the MMA fighters out there and casual fans who watch the sport to understand that you can't just let someone drop down and put you in a guillotine. Usually, people do use that opportunity for the other person to tire out their arms, and then once they do, they go into side control. That's usually what happens. It's very difficult to finish it, like Casper said, from that position, unless you have a really great guillotine game like Team Alpha Male or Jim Miller. But I think people will learn now that you can't just drop down to someone's guillotine at this level. Not in the UFC.
I think
Maybe around the corner down the street, but not in the UFC.
Yeah, I think it really depends on who's putting that guillotine on as well, to a degree. I mean, we saw what happened with Josh Berkman and John Fitch. John Fitch obviously known for having a rubber neck. I don't think anyone expected, Josh Berkman to finish that guillotine, much less put John Fitch out. But and you're right what you said, Dennis. A lot of guys, it's a tactic. They let the guillotine, they let him get it in there. They let him gas the arms out. And, once they let go, they're kind of screwed. They get in that side control and, you can rain down on top or you can really go to work. And even if that guy is a good striker, for example, his arms will be gassed by then. But, yeah, when you've got a Jim Miller or Uriah Faber, or Joseph Benavidez, guys like that, it really pays to stay busy, work, and get him out of there. And I think that was actually the case in the next fight against Luke Rockhold and Tim Boesch. What did you think of that one, Dennis?
Well, I mean, what can you think about it? Luke Rockhold coming out looking great, lean, big size, big frame for the division that he's in, which is middleweight. Tim Boesch comes out, strong guy, but an amazing thing happens. Last fight that Luke had, it was a very decisive finish. A kick to the liver, I believe, to Costu Philippou.
Yeah.
This fight, he showed us a submission game, basically securing a reverse triangle and Kimura. Now, Luke did hurt his toe in the cage. He thinks he broke it. And as you know, we asked Javier about it, and no one's quite sure about the severity of the damage just yet. So it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if Tim Boesch did get out. Unfortunately, he did not. He got caught in that Kimura. Now, this is another move, actually, very similarly to letting someone put a guillotine on you. Not a lot of people finish a rear triangle choke. When a lot of people put on it in practice, a lot of wrestlers tend to just let it go on. They tend to let the people tire out the legs, and then they'll get out of it and use that momentum to their advantage. So Tim Boesch kind of just sat there. Luke Rockhold, this is a technique that he finishes constantly in training. Coupled with the Kimura that he put on Tim, Tim was in a whole lot of trouble. I think Tim realized as soon as Luke started going for that Kimura that he shouldn't have just been laying there waiting for Luke's legs to tire out. And it was a picture-perfect highlight submission finish for Luke Rockhold, cementing his case as one of the top guys in the middleweight division.
Yeah, I was really, really impressed by Luke Rockhold, and I think a win over Tim Boesch, he's no joke. He really has the ability to upset guys. Obviously, he's beaten guys like Hector Lombard, Yushin Okami, Nick Ring, Kendall Grove. He lost pretty badly to Mark Munoz in his previous fight, but he's one of those guys. As long as he's moving, he's a very dangerous guy. And I think when you've got him on his back or when you out wrestle him, that's when he starts to lose a little bit of steam. And that's exactly what Luke Rockhold did. In this case, Tim Boesch didn't even get an opportunity to gain any momentum. And I think you're right, Dennis. By the time Tim Boesch realized that he was not only had that inverted triangle, but he went for the Kimura, it really was too late. And I think Timbo, you could see it on his face. He really regrets not being a bit more busy. And that's the second time he's been finished by Kimura. Obviously,
a strange Kimura.
Yeah, not just a regular one, but a really, I want to use the word ostentatious, but I have absolutely no idea what that word means. So let's just say a sexy Kimura. The previous one was obviously Phil Davis with his Mr. Wonderful, which is a one-arm Kimura behind his back. Got some crazy leverage on there, that sneaky Phil Davis. And worth noting, Phil Davis was wearing pink trunks during that fight.
Very, very worthwhile noting. And
pink trunks.
Luke Rockhold defeating Tim Boesch via submission inverted triangle Kimura. Now, if that's not sexy to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys, I don't know what is. It was a very good finish. And something else, Tim Boesch, I don't think he thought about the Kimura at all. I think he just thought he's going to put the rear triangle choke on me, and it's not going to work. And I think Luke knew it wasn't going to finish him off. I think Tim thought it wasn't going to finish him off. As soon as he realized he was hunting for that arm, though, I think everybody saw in Tim's face, he was like, oh, crap, I got to get out of here. But it was just too late.
Yeah, I don't think he expected Luke to work for anything. I think he expected Luke to rest on his laurels and just finish him like that, which in that sense, Tim Boesch would have been pretty safe. But yeah, Luke's a bit too smart for that. And he's got a good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background. So couple that with his size, his striking, his goddamn surfy good looks. I hate that. Why is he so much better looking than us? But
you speak for yourself, buddy.
I
still have a shot.
Oh, really? Well, we'll get Luke on the show and he can decide.
We'll all turn on Skype, and then everybody will see how hideous we really are.
Who does he come towards? Be like in that movie, As Good as It Gets. But up next, we had Anthony Johnson versus Phil Davis. Now, this fight for me was probably one of the most interesting fights on the card, just because Anthony Johnson was such a massive, massive underdog in this fight. I don't think quite Tim Boesch underdog or Glover Teixeira underdog, but obviously Tim Boesch and Glover Teixeira, they didn't win. Anthony Johnson really proved the critics wrong. If you went on any MMA website the night before, even in the week leading up to UFC 172, everybody was predicting a WrestleFest decision by Phil Davis on Anthony Johnson. Everybody thought that Phil Davis, had the wrestling chops, take him down, grind him out, possibly even submit him. I even said, look, if he takes him down to the ground, he might submit him the way Koscheck did Anthony Johnson. But wow, were we proven wrong?
We were proven wrong, Casper. That's a great point. Something else, Phil Davis, did focus a lot on Jon Jones coming into this fight. And that's always a tough situation when you've got such a tough test against you. I don't think Phil Davis underestimated Anthony Johnson.
You know?
But I think he might have underestimated how hard it would be to take him down. And that was the story of the fight. He went for that takedown. He realized he couldn't do it. All of a sudden, he's stuck standing with Anthony Johnson. He wasn't prepared for that. And, Anthony Johnson outworked him like a delicious Sunday night roast.
It was exactly like a Sunday night roast in many ways. But I think everybody, including ourselves, including most of the media, didn't expect Anthony Johnson's wrestling to be that good. I think possibly they thought about the Koscheck fight, where he really got out-wrestled. And then you think a guy like Phil Davis, he's got the size, he's got the reach, he's got the wrestling chops, surely he's going to outdo him. But Anthony Johnson at light heavyweight, he's a new beast. And then I guess you factor in those previous, 6 wins outside the UFC. And, like we see Hector Lombard, I mean, how long did he go undefeated in middleweight? And then, it really didn't mean much when he came into the UFC. And he's in welterweight now. So I think same thing for Anthony Johnson. It was a really big test. Did those wins mean much? Does it mean as much fighting a guy like Arlovsky and beating him at heavyweight? And we proved it did. Here's my take on it. Phil Davis, the things that really came out. I thought he did underestimate Anthony Johnson, and I feel bad for the guy because he talks so much shit about Jon Jones and this and that, which is fine. Dana White did say Phil Davis seems content with being, in the middle and doesn't seem like he wants to go for it. So I think he took that as he really needs to stir the pot. And he did. He talked shit. He didn't talk much shit about Anthony Johnson. And really, that's the guy that he should have been thinking about. And he got absolutely outclassed. And I think this fight showed, I think Phil Davis, and I mean this in the nicest way, I think he might be a little bit overrated. Because while he has good wrestling, his striking really hasn't evolved that much. I mean, he can mix it up. He's got very basic striking, but as we saw, as soon as Anthony Johnson started throwing, Phil Davis panicked a lot. I mean, he was running away. That's not exactly what you want to do. If Phil Davis was, it's not a case of being smarter, but I think Phil Davis could have ducked those big haymakers and possibly taken Anthony Johnson down. But I mean, in that octagon, they looked like there were 2 weight classes separated. That was insane how big Anthony Johnson was. And I feel bad for Phil Davis because I think this is the second time where he really had a shot at making it, towards contender status, and it really slipped through his fingers.
Yeah, I agree with you. So, just a couple of points on the fight because he did a really good job covering it. I think it was a mental thing for Phil Davis. He couldn't take Anthony down, and then, he realized he was stuck up there. I agree with you. I think he was a little bit overrated going into this fight. I'd like to see him improve his striking a bit. I do think he threw a lot of 1-2s. I'd like to see better combinations from Phil Davis. Near the end of the fight, surprisingly, he actually loosened up a little bit and did throw a few decent kicks and a few different decent combinations, and Johnson was a little bit gassed, which is something to think about in the future when he does go into those 5-round fights for the likes of, well, I'm not saying he's going to have a title shot against Jon Jones real soon, but, some of those top echelon guys that might drag him out in the 5 rounds if it's a main event. But just one of the stories for me of this fight was Phil Davis, the way people spoke about Phil Davis after the fight in the post-fight press conference. Obviously, Jon Jones, very happy. Phil Davis sort of ate his words. Where are you now, Phil? Joking around with the people, everybody having a bit of a laugh. Dana White, however, talking about he felt like Phil Davis was never hungry. He was always happy just to be in the top 4 in the light heavyweight division. And DW, as I like to call him, I don't know if I like it when he talks about fighters like that. I mean, I feel like it's a little bit of a kick to the teeth when you're down. It's sort of like kicking a bit of dirt in the wound. when you're trying to get back up. I don't think it's necessary to talk about Phil like that. At the end of the day, Phil's still one of his guys. He still fought in the fight. Didn't have the best fight, but he did what he did, and I still think that people should show Phil a little bit of respect after this fight.
Oh yeah, I think Phil deserves all the respect in the world. I mean, he had a bad night. He got basically outclassed. His game plan didn't work at all, and that happens. It happens to the best of the guys. Glover Teixeira is not a shit fighter by any means. It just happens. Just quickly, I hate to be one of those guys who's like, let's compare records. But if you do look at Phil Davis's record, he is very, very, very untested. I mean, he beat Tim Boetsch. That's great. Tim Boetsch is a tough guy, but Tim Boetsch didn't really belong at light heavyweight. Then he beat Little Nog, Antonio Nogueira. That's great, solid win. But again, Nogueira's not exactly title contender, and the guy's always injured. He lost to Rashad Evans, got very much outclassed. His next big win was Wagner Prado, who is not exactly a big win. Vinny Magalhaes, and Vinny looked absolutely terrible in that fight. And then there was his win over Lyoto Machida, which I don't think he won. And then he lost to Anthony Johnson. So I think people need to maybe pump the brakes a little bit on Phil Davis. I'd love to see him do big things. Oh, also, he's beaten Alexander Gustafsson, but I mean, let's be honest, that's when Alexander Gustafsson didn't have any wrestling whatsoever. So I think with Phil Davis, it's a case of, I don't know if he's going to be a number one contender anytime soon, unless he makes some drastic changes, and I don't know, maybe gets in a crazy striking coach or really takes lessons from Gustafsson and really, really improves his striking. Because if he can do that, I don't think Phil will ever have that one-punch knockout power. But if he can at least have really good functional striking, something similar to Jon Jones, when Jon Jones was starting out, where he didn't have that knockout power, but he really knew how to use his length. If Phil Davis can be something like that, coupled with his amazing wrestling, then he can be a threat. Then he can at least, fake the takedown, get in with strikes, fake with strikes, get in with the takedown. But at the moment, he's a little bit too one-dimensional for, the upper echelon of the UFC light heavyweight division.
Yeah, I agree with you. Phil Davis trains at Alliance. He's one of the top dogs there. It might be time for Phil to take a bit of a field trip, go to a few other gyms, learn striking from a few different coaches, like you said. And I wonder what this is going to do to Phil. Two things can happen. Number one, we may, see a decline in Phil Davis and see him lose the next few fights, or he might take Dana's comments and really take it and use it as a motivator, to come out as a brand new Phil Davis. Look at Fabricio Verdum, he improves every fight. I'd like to see Phil Davis have a fraction of that improvement in his fights, and then we can talk about him again. But definitely a bit of a surprise for everybody. Speaking of everybody was excited for the main event on the UFC 172, which was Jon Jones versus Glover Teixeira. This was a big one. Vegas didn't like Glover Teixeira too much. I believe he was almost a 1-6 underdog. So, those Vegas guys, they're hard to impress. And, there was a big build-up for this fight. John Hackleman was on our show. If you didn't hear it, we were the guys where he first compared Jon Jones to Chuck Liddell. Then it all kind of leaked out. Ariel kind of spoke about an interview on the MMA Hour and asked him the same questions we did. And then Chuck Liddell came out and started talking about a potential matchup, how he'd walk through Jones's punches and, beat him. And, this whole malarkey came about. But it all led ultimately to this fight with Jon Jones and Glover Teixeira.
And I'll tell you something, I don't have too much to say about this fight just because I was just sitting there with my mouth open. I mean, this was literally watching greatness unravel with Jon Jones, the way he fought a very, very tough contender in Glover Teixeira. Now, even though people weren't giving Glover Teixeira much of a chance against Jon Jones, and that's fair enough, completely understandable, Glover Teixeira is still a very, 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 very good fighter who will beat most of the upper echelon light heavyweights. And it might even be a very similar story, even as far as nationality, to the heavyweight division with Cain Velasquez and Junior Dos Santos. Glover could be, the Junior Dos Santos to Jon Jones's Cain Velasquez. Even in the fact of, great striker, great knockout artist compared to the great wrestler with the, amazing athleticism. But yeah, this is just a crazy fight. Jon Jones, uber confident as usual, put on quite the spectacle. And really outclassed Glover in his field. I mean, it wasn't a case of Jon Jones going for a takedown, taking him down, ground and pound. This is a brand new Jon Jones. And I don't even remember the last time we saw that Jon Jones who took him down and, through those elbows. I mean, Jon Jones is very content to stand in the pocket with guys like Glover Teixeira and pretty much anyone in the world now. And he took his shots. I mean, it's crazy. Jon Jones, like, people were waiting for him to take a big punch and see if, he really had the chin. And a lot of people didn't think he had it, until a few fights ago. But he really proved it. He's got a crazy chin, similar to Anderson, a few years ago. He's got a great chin. He knows how to use that reach. He can stand in the pocket. And he looked so much more explosive in this fight. I mean, he was throwing crazy bombs at Glover Teixeira. I liked how he tweaked Glover's arm at the start of the fight. I don't know what's more impressive about Jon Jones. His streak, his athleticism, or his fight IQ. And I think that's the main story came out of this fight. It was such a smart fight. And people can talk all the shit about Greg Jackson, etc., but it wasn't by any means a boring fight. It was a guy completely outclassing another guy who's also really good. What do you think, Dennis?
Yeah, I think, that's a great point. Huge fight IQ. And Jon Jones was comparing his fight to Ali versus Fraser. Obviously, Ali took a lot of punches from Fraser and tied him out. And that's what Jon Jones said he wanted to do at the end of the fight. He put his hands over his head because he wanted Teixeira to hit him. He wanted Teixeira to get tied. And, he let Teixeira get in there so he could throw a few of his leaping punches and try and tire him out. Obviously, he's got a lot of muscle. I was actually impressed with Glover's conditioning. He's got great conditioning. I know a lot of people have said he's got great conditioning, but this really proves that he does have pretty good conditioning. Just the wrong game plan. Glover Teixeira, very talented athlete, no doubt about it. Put this in your pipes and smoke, people. Glover's got a lot more skills than he showed in that title fight. Now, he's got a certain way that he fights. He comes from the pit, and they fight a certain way as well. My respects to John Hackleman, Chuck Liddell, amazing fighters from the pit. But I think Glover really needed to mix it up more. Once Jones loosened up and got used to Glover, it was pretty much the Jon Jones show featuring Glover Teixeira. Glover could have really mixed it up. He could have gone for more takedowns. He could have mixed up his striking. He didn't have to throw haymakers the whole time. He could have thrown a few jabs, set up those punches a bit more, and be a bit more elusive for Jon Jones. Jon Jones, a clever fighter, a lot of really interesting techniques coming out. Obviously, that strange armbar shoulder tweak that he was doing up against the fence really did hurt Glover Teixeira, so it was very effective. It hurt his shoulder and really took away from him during the fight. What I don't like about it, though, and I'll go on record and say it, I don't like it when Jon Jones takes his fingers and puts them in Glover Teixeira's face. I think those kind of techniques should be outlawed in MMA. It's very dangerous to put your fingers right in someone's face because it's IPOC Central USA, and I think something needs to be done about that. It's also, but Jon Jones, he uses a whole bunch of really strange techniques where he grabs your wrists, frustrates you, throws elbows, does the shoulder stuff, does strange kicks. It's one of the special things about Jon Jones. So I agree with you. Greg Jackson in between rounds said, Jon Jones, this is a very artistic fight, and I agree with him. It was like an artist sitting in front of a canvas with his paintbrushes and doing a whole bunch of amazing things. That's what Jon Jones looked like. It was a pleasure to watch. I was excited by it. I was a little bit bummed, to be honest with you. I was really looking forward to Glover fighting Jones. I was one of the guys that thought, he had a real shot against him. But, Jones proved me wrong. Amazing chin, amazing athlete. And he loved the cheers, Cass. He loved the cheers. He loved being cheered.
Yeah, I think that's another thing about Jon Jones. As we're seeing, I don't know whether it's Jon Jones really taking a good look at himself or someone from the PR team really, whispering in Jon Jones's ear, but he's getting a lot better. He's getting a lot better with the PR, with, how he handles himself. I feel bad for the guy that, some idiot from his team, sent out those tweets. What an idiot. I really feel bad for him just when things were going right. It's the last thing Jon Jones needed. But, he's getting better. I was listening to an interview with his manager / agent, Malachi Kawa, talking about, even Ali was pretty hated at the start, and then the tide turned. And, Anderson Silva, he hasn't been loved all his career, you know what I mean? I think people were pretty disappointed when he beat Rich Franklin because, Rich Franklin's such a lovable guy. And then there was also the Abu Dhabi UFC 112 incident of 74. We'll never forget that one. And I think Jon Jones is really coming into his own. I mean, he's he really is greatness personified, and I think he's the epitome of a mixed martial artist. I mean, this guy takes techniques from absolutely everywhere. He uses things that aren't even techniques. You know what I mean? He'll see something in a cooking show, and he'll be like, "Damn, look at them frying that steak. I'm going to use that in my next fight." I mean, he literally puts random things in the cage, and they work for him. He pulls them off. And the crazy thing is, he hasn't been doing this for even that long. I mean, he's been doing MMA for what, 6 years, if that. So the fact that he's accomplished this is just amazing. I will agree with, though, disappointed by Glover. Wrong game plan. He's such a good striker, and the one thing disappointed me is Glover Teixeira is such a well-rounded guy. He's got nines in every asset of his game. Great striking, knockout power, great wrestling, great jiu-jitsu. Everything. He's got kicks. He's not just a boxer. But all he really did was box with Jon Jones. He didn't mix it up at all. I don't think he went for enough takedowns. He should have at least feinted. Do something. And I think as much as it at first annoyed me to see Jon Jones comparing Glover to Rampage, it really was very much a Rampage fight. Glover kind of stood there, he froze up a little bit, and just, too many looping punches. I don't understand that when you've got a guy with the reach of Jon Jones, who was obviously ducking those punches and, getting out of the way. I don't understand why he's throwing so many looping punches. Set up the jab. Do what Jon Jones is doing. He had his hands in his face and he had the fingers and everything like that. But what he was also doing was keeping the distance and, feeling him out. And I think if Glover covered the distance better with jabs, set up those looping punches, he might have had a bit more success. And at least if he faked takedowns, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you, Cass. Wholeheartedly agree with you. And, one of the other things I just want to mention about the fight, and, we're not Glover's trainers. He's got trainers, John Hackelman. And, mind you, John did tell him, in between rounds, go knock him out. And I thought, with all due respect, maybe it's a bit late to be saying that. And maybe that's the problem with the game plan. When you go out there trying to knock a guy out, you succumb to these things. You're throwing these looping punches, trying to knock someone out. Ultimately, rounds start stacking up against you if that's not working. It's sort of like when you play NBA 2K14 and you try to go for three-pointers the whole game. Sometimes the three-pointers work. Sometimes the three-pointers don't work. But when they don't work, do you want to lose a game because of that? And I honestly thought, that's what happened to Glover Teixeira. But just with one other thing that Glover did that kind of annoyed me was he didn't move in and out. So let's say, Mike Tyson would move right into that reach and try to knock the guy out, but then he'd move right out so he doesn't get hit. Glover just stood there in between getting hit. So I thought, Glover, if you're not going for the punches, get out of the striking distance. Make it a little bit difficult for Jones, and he did not do that. He stood around like a punching bag at times, and if Jones did the same thing, he would have gotten knocked out. So, I mean, Jones is a smart fighter. He uses great techniques, and he's got a lot of skill. But make no mistake about it. If he came in with the same game plan as Glover Teixeira, he'd still be lying in Maryland trying to figure out how to catch the first plane out of the octagon. He'd just be waking up now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I fully agree with you, and I was just very disappointed with, and you mentioned the game plan. I think that's pretty much always a bad game plan. When your game plan is to go there and knock the guy out, I think that could really fail you more often than not. Even if your name is Glover Teixeira, he's probably going to knock most guys out. But if he's expecting to just go there and throw looping punches and knock Jon Jones out, then I guess at the end of the day, it was Glover who was underestimating Jon Jones, not the other way around. And it's just such a shame to see a guy with such a huge arsenal who really could have... And that's the thing, it seems so obvious. If you don't knock him out in the first, second, third, fourth, what are you going to do? You basically put yourself in a corner, and you have to knock him out in the fifth round. And that's what John Hackelman was saying. He was saying to him in between rounds, I think in later, after the fourth, in the fifth round, he was saying, go knock him out, or like if you knock him out, that title's yours. And it's like, yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true, but that's not very constructive... there's not very good instructions. He was always trying to knock him out. He just wasn't succeeding. I think if Glover went in there and maybe tried to fight, not like a point fighter, but just try to put everything together, use the kicks, use the punches, go with his wrestling, try and take him down more, do something a little bit different. Instead, he was a little bit predictable. And I think Jon Jones not only predicted him very well, but, really outsmarted him, and just, he absolutely shone in that fight. It was really amazing to watch. And looking at it now, I really don't know who else is going to be a big test for Jon Jones. We've obviously got the Gustafsson fight coming up, which I'm expecting to see a very different Jon Jones in. I'd definitely be down for another 5-round war. That was an excellent fight, but I think Jon Jones is really going to go for the kill and not underestimate him. And he's got amazing camp with Greg Jackson and Coach Winklejohn. Those guys really are amazing. And then of course we've got Cormier. So the future looks pretty interesting for the moment, at least in light heavyweight.
Yeah, sure. You got an Anthony Johnson there. He might, if he improves a few facets of the game, maybe he'll be a problem in the future. So that was the fight. But more importantly, what do we want to give Jon for his entrance dance to the ring? I'm talking about a rating out of 10. Maybe we'll do it. What's a good measuring metric here at Submission Radio? Perhaps out of 10 taps, how many taps do you give him? I give him 7.5 taps because I like that he came out to remix with a few different songs, and I appreciate a bit of showmanship. Like I said, Jon Jones in the post-fight press conference talking about how he loved the cheers. How it's a bit disheartening for him when he gets booed, and it was a happy dude in that post-fight press conference. So 7.5 taps out of 10.
Well, I actually enjoyed it. I think it's good to see someone walking out happy, so cool, calm, and relaxed. And we haven't seen entrances like that since Anderson Silva, and who knows how long that's gonna last. So I really enjoyed seeing that. He was obviously channeling, Ray Lewis, and he did three songs in on one entrance.
It was almost a concert. It was almost an MTV showcase.
Hey, I'm all for spectacle. You know what I mean? We when we were younger, we were big pro wrestling fans. I'm a big fan of that kind of stuff, and as long as it doesn't overshadow the fight, I'm all for it. So I'm giving him 9 taps.
Ooh, 9 taps. Where does he go from here? Anyway, we'll have to see.
Well,
he set a precedent, that's for sure.
The only way to get a 10 is if he comes in from the rafters.
That's a good point.
Shawn Michaels style.
Well, what about if it's like a Tom Lawler or whatever, and he comes in with the face paint, dressed as Sting?
9.5. Anyone who does Shockmaster at the weigh-ins, that's pretty amazing right there.
Shockmaster. That's like Roy Nelson or something. And anyway, guys, it was an amazing time. Make sure you go on Twitter at Submission Radio AUS. Follow us because that's where all the latest updates are and all the latest cards, exciting talks, hilarious pictures and memes, and all the latest information about upcoming interviews. And speaking of upcoming interviews, the next guest that we're going to have, I reckon he is one of the most loved fighters in the UFC. He just has such a following. Everybody loves this guy. I'm, of course, talking about Mike Swick. Yeah,
I've never met someone who didn't like Mike Swick. He had that amazing comeback. I believe it was in 2012 against DeMarcus, and what a great fight. Can't wait to have a chat to this guy. We're going to talk to him about his new gym, what's happening, when's he coming back, what division is he going to fight in, how's he doing, and how's Thailand treating him. So I think we've got a really quick break, and then we'll be back right after this with Mike Swick.
They're just trading bombs.
They fought 2 of the best fights in MMA history. Now the sport's greatest trilogy ends here. Live Saturday, May 17th.
The fight of the year.
Lightweight world champion Eddie Alvarez battles Michael Chandler in an epic 3rd fight.
What an incredible fight.
Plus,
I'm a monster.
It's MMA's biggest grudge match. Quinton Rampage Jackson.
I'm back. You react.
Faces King Mo.
This is epic.
Alvarez versus Chandler 3. Live Saturday, May 17th. Only on pay-per-view.
All right, guys, our next guest on the show is a fan favorite, a UFC veteran, and a 2-time KO of the Night winner. He has now built an amazing gym overseas in Thailand. We have Mike Swick on the show. Mike, welcome to Submission Radio.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Well, we're doing great, but it's great having you on the show. Mike, I just mentioned the AK Thailand Phuket gym. You've been very, very involved in this project. You spent, most of 2013 working on it. You're there right now. Tell us a little bit about how all this came together.
Oh, man, it's an accumulation of a lot of things, but I've been training in Thailand since 2000, basically, and it's been a big part of my training and in life, and I've just enjoyed the atmosphere and the fight culture, and through the years, I've moved to different locations and trained in different spots. And right now, the mecca, I think, in the world for training and fitness is Phuket. I mean, there's more fighters coming in here than probably anywhere in the world as far as importing in, and coming in for training specifically. So this was the spot. It's a beautiful island. You have the jungle, you got the island. It's just the best of everything. And so we built a really big gym, and it's very exciting.
Now, we've seen all the pictures on your Instagram, on your Twitter, and the gym looks amazing. There's heaps of images and pictures, and it looks like it's really coming together. Tell us about some of the facilities that we've got in there.
Man, we got everything. We have, it's got MMA, obviously. That's a big part of it. I've always dreamed of having a really nice MMA facility in Thailand, which obviously when I first started coming here, that wasn't here at all. And then they slowly started doing more MMA as time went on. But we have one of the biggest facilities I've ever trained in, actually. So we have a 3,000 square foot matted training facility, another 1,500 square foot Rousimer matted training facility as well on the other side. So we have over 4,500 square feet of mat space. And it's just a really clean facility, great instructors. We got Marco Machado, second-degree black belt, with Checkmat in here, one of the best guys I've ever worked with. He's a fighter, he's a jiu-jitsu guy, and it's just, we're forming a great team. And obviously we got the Muay Thai, huge in Thailand, as you know. Great facility for that. Some of the best Muay Thai trainers in Thailand. Our head guy is Fighter of the Year in Thailand, multiple-time Olympic champion, really good with people, really good trainer. We have a 2-story fitness building, so we have a weight room as well as cardio and fitness. We're doing strength and conditioning classes as well, so it's kind of a one-stop shop for fighting, for fitness. We're doing weight loss boot camps, everything. So it's just a cool place to come and train. And you're on the island. You go 5 minutes away on your moped, and you're at a beautiful beach. You got fishing, you got elephants, monkeys. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and obviously Thailand, very close to Australia, so I'm sure a lot of the Australians listening to this interview right now would love to come visit it. Speaking of people visiting the gym, are there any plans for other AK fighters such as Ken Velasquez when he comes back, Daniel Cormier, Luke Rockhold, or any of the others to do some of their training camp there now that it's all ready and built?
Yeah, I just got back from headquarters last week, and I was training with Luke and some of the guys there, and Habib, and he's coming in with his team here in this summer, so maybe in like a month or two. Luke really wants to come, and it's an AK gym, it's part of the family, so we're going to be back and forth. Whoever can get over here, especially when we have the Asia fights. The UFC is moving into Asia. They fought in Macau, and there's been talk of some more shows coming up in maybe Manila and Singapore, so yeah, it's going to be a great hub to have in Asia where these fighters can come in and get acclimated and get ready for their fights.
Now, you mentioned Macau and Asia. Obviously, you had a big hand in training Ultimate Fighter runner-up Wang Sai. And in that fight, I was actually watching it last night again, and I could see your face when the judges read out the decision. Tell us a little bit about how you felt when that happened, and Wang Sai was a runner-up where a lot of people felt he should have been the winner.
Yeah, it's just one of those things, man. I was expecting his hands to be raised, and he didn't get the decision, which was, he fought a good fight, and he improved so much from the time he got here and until that fight, and he worked so hard, and he did everything we wanted, and sometimes you're biased, but it was even more disheartening to know that we weren't as biased, and there's so many people that thought the same thing. The UFC and Dana White all posted on Twitter that there was a bad decision, and it's just part of the game, though. This happens, so there's not much you can do about it. He did his job. He trained hard, and he went out there and he made us proud. So he's part of the family, and he's actually back. He's still got a cast on his hand he broke his thumb in the first round of that fight, and never said a word about it. And he's feeling right now, but he's actually back training. He's just not using that hand, but he loves it here, and he's family, like I said, so we're getting ready for the next one and not let it go to a decision.
Now, you mentioned obviously that you were training him, and you've been doing a lot of training there in general. A lot of people say that when you coach people, sometimes you learn a lot more just because of the fact that you have to break things down and maybe see them from a different perspective. Do you find this to be the case?
Yeah, I do, actually. I don't know. I think people are more disciplined when they're coaching other people, and sometimes you lose that discipline when you're training because you're so focused on so many different things. You know, be it the stress of the fight and the time frame and cardio and everything else. So, yeah, I definitely think when you're breaking things down and showing them, it also reiterates to you, you know, that there's a reason these things work, and maybe I should work on that more or do this. So, yeah, definitely.
Now, Mike, going back to your fighting career, last time you fought was in 2012. It's been a while since you've been back in the ring. Just tell us a little bit about when you're looking to make a return into the UFC, and you know, do you have a bit of a timeline, or are you just a bit unsure at the moment?
Yeah, right now I'm just focused on my health and getting this gym running, up and running. I have some injuries that are lingering on. I got my health back a lot from before. Obviously, I was not doing too good during that time for those fights, walking at 170. But I'm back up to 210 now. I feel good. I'm able to eat, get my strength back. So things are definitely going in the right direction. And as soon as this thing gets fully open and running, which will probably be within the next month, then I'll start preparing to try to book a fight.
And I wanted to ask you also, in a recent photo, actually a few of your recent photos on your Twitter and Instagram, there was one where you were standing next to Aussie heavyweight UFC fighter Sol Palele, who obviously trains at AK at Thailand, and you looked absolutely massive. You actually made Sol look pretty small, and Sol was a guy who makes Mark Hunt look tiny. When you do return, do you see yourself going back to 170, or will you be going back to, say, middleweight or even light heavyweight?
No, I'll fight middleweight. Yeah, no, I got my size back. For like 6 or 7 years, I've been walking really light because of my health issues with my esophagus. So I haven't been able to eat the proper diet, and basically I've been just really malnourished. So I'm able to do that now and get my diet back and my size. So, yeah, I'll definitely be fighting 185.
Just speaking about your condition, Mike, for the people at home that don't know much about it, obviously, you had a stomach condition that really limited you and kept you out of the ring for a couple of years. You were able to manage it and return in 2012. Can you just give us an update on your health? How's it going? How's the whole stomach thing going? And do you really think that you will return to the UFC again?
Yeah, it's going good. I was on some new medicine after the last fight, and it's enabled me to eat again and basically get my size back. So I feel great. Being in Thailand, I always feel better. I mean, if you ever come here, you'll see it's just a very low stress environment and just very beautiful. Everyone's very friendly. It's great training, so it's very low stress, and it just makes you feel better, and healthier and more energized. So I think the mix of that and being on the medicine has helped me a lot, and I'm definitely looking forward to fighting again. Just don't have a specific time frame.
Obviously, putting together such a massive gym is a huge undertaking. And obviously, when you start any kind of business or a project, there's obviously things that don't go quite right. What were some of the hurdles that you faced when you put together this amazing gym?
Oh man, there's just so many. You nailed it with that one, but this gym has went. Aside from little hiccups here and there, and then just the hard work, it's been really well. But this is basically I've had to start over twice to get to this point. So I've had 2 gyms that failed in Thailand. I've been trying to build them for many different reasons. So it's been a learning process and, a testament to just keep moving forward and picking yourself back up. I failed twice, and both times it just seemed like I would never be able to do a gym, and I just kept going, moving forward, baby steps, and things worked themselves out, and now we got a monster.
Now, Mike, you mentioned that you'd be looking to return into the middleweight division. What are your thoughts on the middleweight division at the moment? Obviously, there was the big shake-up. Weidman is now champion. Do you see yourself fighting some of the people in the upper echelon in the middleweight division? And is a title still a goal for you as a UFC fighter?
Yeah, no, I want to go back in and just fight. No, a title is not in my mind at this time. I just want to fight and fight healthy for the first time in years and years. It's just been a long, stressful experience dealing with my health and trying to focus on fighting and not being able to eat what I want to. And, it'll just be nice to get in there and fight again. My number one priority now is this gym and helping other people pursue their careers and find success and kind of living vicariously through these guys. So that's what's going to ultimately make me the most happy versus my own achievements or anything. So, fighting is now for the fun and getting back in there and just performing and having a good time and putting on a show versus trying to make it to the top. And, obviously the goals that I had when I was fighting before.
Now, obviously, your last fight, you had a tough outing against Matt Brown. It was a UFC on Fox. It sounds like, by the sound of things, with the gym and all these improvements, it sounds like you're getting ready to reinvent yourself. Obviously, you're going to be in a fresh weight class. What did you learn from your last fight, and what are some of the new things that we can see from the new and improved Mike Swick?
It wasn't even really about lessons. There was just a lot of circumstances around that time of my life that's like, it's not so much that I should have learned a lesson. It's more so that I'm just happy that I'm not experiencing those things anymore. Like you said, I've kind of built a new life, and I have kind of a new, healthier body, and it's just a new chapter for me. And I don't know. I guess if there was a lesson to learn, I should have taken that fight, I guess. But it's easier said than done. And had I won the fight, I'd have been like, oh, yes, I'm glad I took the fight. So. Looking back, I shouldn't have taken either one, but I definitely don't regret the first one. That was the biggest fight and win of my career, I think, given the circumstance. But ideally, I should have stopped then until I got my situation better. Like gambling, you take one fight you may not have should have taken, and it turns out to be a success and a great feeling. You want that again, instead of just backing off and doing the right thing. So. The greed in me chased that again, and then I learned a lesson. So I guess that would be the lesson I learned in that circumstance.
And Mike, just to expand on that, your return in 2012, what kind of brought that on? What made you decide to return briefly in 2012? You mentioned, you enjoy being a part of the UFC, you enjoy the experience. Was it that, or were there any other factors that went into it?
I missed part of the question, but you were asking what made that experience?
Yeah,
want to come back and fight?
Yeah, in 2012, what sort of made you decide to? You mentioned that maybe you shouldn't have come back, or maybe you still had a couple of health issues, or this or that. What was the exact reason why you decided to come back, and the reasoning behind it in your mind in 2012?
Oh man, it was so many things. Well, I was coming off the losses before, which was the darkest period of my life. And then from there, after those losses, I blew my knee completely out and had my health conditions get even worse. So there was 310 days or something that I went without fighting. No, I'm sorry, 910 days. Geez, not 310. It's almost 3 years without fighting. So given that I had 2 losses back to back, and then a head injury, and then 910 days without fighting, it was super important for me to get back in there and feel that experience again of fighting and winning, and just proving to myself that I can actually do it. That I can pick myself up. Just about the worst thing that can happen to you, I think, in a career, with all those things on top of each other, and manage to go out there and get a win and block everything out and just do what you have to do. And if you see the fight, I mean, that's kind of how I fought. I mean, it was a desperation fight where there was no plan B. I didn't see myself losing. I had to win that fight somehow, and it started out good, and then the end of the first round, it wasn't good, and I had to think about what I needed to do that whole, minute break between the first and second, and by the time I went out for the second, I was going to hit as hard as I can, just anything that came. And luckily, it matched up, and I got the win.
Now, a lot of people would have seen you for the first time, obviously, on the very famous first season of The Ultimate Fighter. A lot of the guys that were on that show with you, such as Stephan Bonner, Forrest Griffin, they're now retired. What are your thoughts on fellow TUF alumni and former AKA team member Josh Koscheck? Do you think due to the severity of his losses, it may be time for Josh to consider retirement?
Well, that's up to him. I don't know what. That's the thing. People are real easy to judge when a fighter should quit. There's so much that people don't know. It could be any different variables that went on in that. And to why everyone else performs the way they do. So there's no way I can really touch on it. If his heart's out of it, or if anyone's heart's out of it, then it's probably a good idea. But only the person knows that. And it seems like I think there's only a few of us left from season 1. So, that's pretty good considering it's been almost 10 years. But it is sad to see kind of like everyone being done fighting now. It's like, I don't know, we're getting old.
I think we're all getting a bit old, Mike. But I was going to say, Fabricio, he had a big win over the weekend. He's now the number 1 contender for Cain Velasquez's world heavyweight title. Obviously, you and Cain are a part of the same team. You have a great relationship. What do you think of this matchup? What are your thoughts when you look at Fabricio versus Cain?
I'll look biased, no matter how I say it, but I feel really confident in Cain with anyone. I don't think there's anyone that's going to be able to beat him.
I've trained with him so long. He's just on a different level. You see him in the gym. He just has a natural ability. He has cardio, and his pressure is like a lightweight, but he's a heavyweight. He's got great technique in his wrestling, obviously, and he's a great striker. So there's just not many people that can keep up with him. I don't see anyone outworking him for sure at that weight class. Even the people that cannot strike him, if they can, there's very few that can even match his striking. And JDF obviously had the answer. He had his kryptonite, but landing that and getting the knockout, which is what he has to do, proved to be very hard in those last fights. So,
if he can't do it, I don't see anyone else being able to do it.
We've got a few other questions for you, Mike. These are the fan questions, obviously from the forums. Just to let you know, it is a tiny little bit hard to hear you, but we'll keep trying. As far as fan questions go, Spidey Yo wants to know, I'd like to hear how you got involved in Taekwondo at an early age and what benefits that style of training had when you later fought in the highest professional levels.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I got into it when I watched The Karate Kid, mostly because I wanted to be with the bad guys and get the girl, just like Ralph Macchio. And it was good with discipline, it kept me busy. A lot of the stuff is close to what you do in MMA. Not obviously the technique, but I did a lot of kicking, a lot of punching. I put a lot of work in a fighting style, which gives you experience, especially sparring. It's fight experience, and I carried over a lot of the kicking, just not the keeping of my hands down, which I had to learn very fast that when you fight for real, it's not good to keep your hands down at your waist. But
it's a very good experience.
Tough Guy has a good question for you, and I was wondering this as well. How come you never fought Chris Lieben again? And was it ever mentioned to you as a possible fight by the UFC at any point during your career?
No, I tried in the UFC, and his team turned the fight down. This was I'm not sure when it was, but we did a reunion show from season 1 on Spike, and it got brought up. Koscheck actually brought it up during the reunion and asked why he wouldn't fight me, and then he said he would. He didn't turn the fight down. And then Dana White called Joe Silva like live on the air, and Joe Silva said that he did indeed turn it down, his camp. So I don't think Lieben would turn down a fight. I don't put him on that, but someone did, because it was going to be a main event on Spike, and they didn't do it. So after that, And then the health issues, I dropped to welterweight, and then we were in 2 different weight classes, so it just wasn't an issue anymore.
One of the awesome ones that'll never happen, I guess. Mark Hammer wants to know, after you retire in-ring, will you remain in the business, or will you pursue a professional poker career, or neither?
I'm sorry, I missed a little bit. The connection's a little bad. What was it again?
Mark Hammer wants to know, after you retire, your fighting career is over, will you remain in the business, or will you pursue a professional poker career?
No, I'll be doing what I'm doing now with the gym. Very excited about my post-fighting life, being able to run this gym and help these fighters and like I said, live vicariously through them. Hopefully by next June, I've been so busy with this gym, like just completely swamped building this thing. We built it from scratch, so there's just a ton of things going on. But hopefully by June, I'll be back at the World Series poker, and I definitely want to pursue poker. I mean, that's a love that I've had for a long time. So, yeah, I'll definitely divide my time between the gym and the poker tables.
Well, now I don't know what I want you to teach us more if we go to Thailand. How to fight in the gym or how to play poker, because I'm horrible. But
poker you can't teach too well, man. It's an experience, I think.
Okay, letting me down easy. Now, K9090 would like to ask you if you see Thai fighters being successful in making the transition from Muay Thai to MMA. Obviously, you got the gym over there in Phuket. What are your thoughts on that?
Someone making the transition from Muay Thai to MMA?
Yeah, Thai fighters in particular.
Yeah, we definitely want to do that. We have a couple Thai guys here that are very interested in doing MMA. Obviously, there's a great need for a very proficient ground game in the sport. I mean, every fight gets taken to the ground, so it's just whoever can take the time and dedication to, learn the wrestling and jiu-jitsu that they'll need. Obviously, their striking is really good. Just some minor changes in the footwork and stance to transition it to MMA, where you'll have takedowns and stuff. But yeah, I think there'll definitely be some people here at AK Thailand that'll make that transition and go from full-on Muay Thai to an MMA career.
Awesome. Now, we're going to transition over to the final segment of the interview. That is the Submission Radio world famous, or at least Melbourne famous, tap out round, where we're going to ask you a bunch of questions. This is like the bonus round where we get to know you a little bit more, and we're going to fire off a whole bunch of them at you, and you just answer pretty much as quick as possible. It's kind of like word association. Are you ready, Mike?
Okay, do I answer in a word or just say the answer?
A quick answer. It can be more than a word, but yeah.
Okay, oh wow.
All right, so
I have a feeling you're going to trick me into something.
We're always trying to trick people into something. Okay, so you're moving up back to the middleweight division. Have you considered the nickname Mike Thick Swick?
No, I haven't yet.
Well, we've got a list here of potential nicknames in case you do want to change them. Listen to these nicknames and tell us which one you would pick out of the list. Kick Swick, Mick Swick, Sheik Swick, Lick Swick, Trick Swick, Flick Swick, or the King of Swing Swick.
Oh, man. Geez, such great choices to choose from. I don't know. Thick Swick is fine.
Okay, we hear that the second Hangover movie was loosely based on your experiences in Thailand. Any truth to these rumors?
No, not at all.
Damn TMZ.
Not any part of it.
Following up from that question, a lot of Australians are in Thailand and have an issue with spotting ladyboys. Can you give us any advice on how we can spot them?
Yeah, that I don't know either, man. Yeah, I can't really help you. I would just be very careful, I guess, unless that's what you're looking for. But
hey?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry, I was going to say any advice is good advice.
Yeah, man, I don't know, man.
Well, Thailand is a wild place. What's the craziest thing you've done in Thailand so far?
Oh, man, I don't even know. A lot of things. I mean, on the island, man, there's so many things to get into. I really don't know. And what degree of crazy you're referring to. But, I mean, I got in the snake pit with the snakes and kind of striking at me, which is really stupid. So maybe that.
Now, Mike, the UFC are thinking of bringing in fighter uniforms. What are your thoughts on that?
Man, I think I don't know. I'm surprised they haven't because, yeah, most sports
eventually get to that. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a loss of revenue for a lot of fighters. I feel sorry for the guys that are coming up, that don't make as much. A lot of times those sponsorship checks are a big part of their income. So I don't know. I mean, it just depends on how they structure it, and if maybe they pay the fighters more to do that. I don't know.
Okay, Mike, pool party in Thailand, and you can invite 3 celebrities. Who's getting the Evite?
Celebrities, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Man, I don't know. I definitely invite The Rock. I like that guy a lot, and I think this would be a cup of tea. Come up here and train AK Thailand. I don't know. It's hard to say on such short notice.
Well, we're big fans of The Rock as well, and you're talking to 2 celebrities now, at least local celebrities. So, me, Dennis, and The Rock. I think
There
it's
you
a
go.
safe bet.
Just join The Rock.
How could we not? Now, Mike, you're a veteran fighter. You're a great trainer. There's a lot of young 19, 20-year-old MMA fighters listening to the show. What's one piece of advice you can give them?
For a young 20-year-old?
Yeah, going into MMA, their life as an MMA fighter.
Oh, man, just train hard. You got to find a good place to train. I mean, you get one shot at building a career for yourself. And I think the number one priority for any fighter coming up should be getting the best training, being at the facility where they can get the best training, be with the best team, and have the best coaching. That's obviously going to expedite your training and your level. And if you're at a gym that's not to the level you're happy with, I suggest come to AK Thailand, and maybe you can get the best training possible, and you're going to have a successful career.
Well, there you go. Now, last question, Mike. If you decided to never fight again, what do you consider your biggest achievement in your fighting career?
Biggest achievement? I don't know. Just I think the biggest fight was the UFC on Fox 4 when I came back and won that fight. That was a personal goal and achievement. But the greatest achievement, I think, is just the people I've helped to inspire that send me letters and that I meet, that people that maybe have nothing to do with fighting and they were just inspired from watching fighting and maybe my career and things like that. It always feels good to see that. And I don't know. I think success should be based on how many people that you reach and inspire, and versus money and cars and things like that. So I think that the most people you can kind of change or touch or influence, I think that's a true measurement of success. So I guess that what little I did.
Well, that's a deep answer right there, and I think it's a great time to finish off the interview and let you go. Mike, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Everybody listening to this interview, check out AKA Thailand Phuket. All the Australians listening who are planning to go to Thailand, make sure you stop by and say hi to Mike. It's an absolutely beautiful facility. You can also follow Mike on Twitter at @officialswick. Find out all the latest information on what's going on with Mike. He's always got some great photos of some elephants and other things that are happening in Thailand, and it's been a real pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, no, it's a great time, man. Yeah, anyone that wants to come out, it's like a family here. It's a great facility. It's a great island. So just come hang out, man, and we'll train. We'll go out and do things, and we'll have a great time. It's just a cool environment, and I appreciate all the support to the listeners out there. So just thanks.
Not a problem, Mike. AKA Thailand, that's where it's at. And also, don't forget to follow Mike at Instagram, Mike_Swick. Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. And we look forward to hearing from you soon about what else is happening in the gym and your next fight in the future.
All right, cool, thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
Mike Quick Swick, he didn't like that other proposed nickname, the King of Swing. I don't know why. It's a good nickname.
I like Mike Thick Swick. I like that one. I think that would work well.
I like Mike Thick Swick, but then you think, does he feel like it's a bit of a laugh at his expense? Like maybe he's not smart, thick.
Yeah, true.
What about Mike Lick Swick? That always goes under the radar for some reason.
Lick Swick. I like Mike Trick Swick. He's pretty tricky, that Swick.
So there's a lot of options for him there, but he looks like he wants to stick with Quick Swick. And hey, I'm not going to judge. Don't take her advice. That's fine. We only stayed up all night coming up with these nicknames.
We're only marketing geniuses, but that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, look at our show. But guys, that's the whole show for tonight or for today. Whatever time you're listening to the show at. It's been a real pleasure having you. As Casper said, remember, send in your questions. If you're listening on YouTube, you could put it in the comment section below, or on Stitcher. You can always just send some comments through. We always love hearing your feedback.
Yeah, guys, check us out. Check us out on Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, Twitter, Submission Radio, AUS. We're always down for a fun time. Check out the funny pictures, memes, and have a chat with us. And if you're watching on YouTube, drop some comments. Let us know what you think of UFC 172. But also let us know what questions you have for Jake Ellenberger, because that's who we've got on next week. So we can't wait to have a chat to him.
He's the best kind of burger. Ellenberger. And, Jake Ellenberger will be on the show. We'll also ask him about Joe Ellenberger. Obviously, he had a bit of a rough run. He didn't end up fighting at UFC 172. And there's a lot of stuff to talk to Jake about. So there's a few misconceptions I want to clear up with him.
Yeah, it's going to be a big, sexy, promiscuous show next week. Check us out on Twitter, Facebook, all over the place. Till then, we'll see you next weekend.
Toodaloo, MMA community.